Hello, welcome to Latin. So my name is Mr. Cordero. Most people will know me as a Spanish teacher. I also teach some French, but I've been teaching Latin here at Haysfield since about 2009, probably. Okay, Mrs. Blythe also teaches Latin here as well. So I studied Spanish and French at A level. I then did Portuguese from scratch at university, and I sort of dabble in various other languages. And I think the Latin that I started and studied at school, along with some ancient Greek, is a good base for a lot of those languages, especially languages like Spanish and French and English, where a lot of our vocabulary and grammar comes from Latin. So this is what the Latin GCSE consists of. Three papers, very different papers: the Latin language, the literature, and the Roman civilization. And you can see how important the language is. Okay, there are two sections of language paper. The section A, which is the bulk of it, that's worth 90% of the paper, is the reading comprehension and translation. So basically, it's a story divided into 4 paragraphs, and the story could be taken from myths and legends such as Julius Caesar, Hannibal and the Elephants, Medusa, Antony and Cleopatra. All sorts of things have come up in the past, and you are reading and questions and answers in the first and the last paragraph, just reading the text and answering questions line by line almost. And the 2 middle paragraphs are a straight translation from the Latin into English, similar to what students do in Spanish and French into English now. The second section, section B, is a very small section. It's 10% of grammar analysis, which is quite straightforward and easy to get your head around. The Latin literature is worth quite a bit, 30%, but don't think of it as if you're not too keen on English literature, don't think it's as at all as in depth as you would be expected to do for English literature. You are doing it in Latin, okay? So you will be given the Latin text, we will have the translation, we will analyze the Latin though, a lot with the English translation alongside. And we study 7 texts. The topic or the theme that you'll be studying was superstition and magic. So there are 7 texts and also 6 or 7 images or photographs of either artifacts or wall mosaics or something like that, wall murals, showing the theme of superstition and magic and omens and things like that, sacrifice. And we're studying authors, for example, some of the classic authors that you may or may not have heard of, people like Ovid and Virgil, Martial. Okay, so studying things like, as I said, good or bad omens, about sacrifice, about augury, which is the study of flights of birds, and things like that. It's really interesting that they're either extracts or in the complete entirety, but then there's not a lot of text, nowhere near as much as English literature, and you don't have to write as much in the paper. A lot of the questions are 1 or 2 mark questions, which just require 1 or 2 word answers or even a simple sentence. Okay, there's only 1 essay as such, the 60 marker at the end, when you can talk about the whole theme and include various sources from the text and the images. It's interesting to read some of the literature because these are the authors who have inspired and influenced authors later on. So anybody from Shakespeare and Chaucer through to Keats and Milton, and even modern day authors like J.K. Rowling with her Harry Potter series and the Hunger Games, they are all based around the same sort of myths and legends and stories that the Latin authors are writing about. The Roman civilization is just worth 20%, and the theme for this year is the daily life in a Roman town. So I'll be talking about houses, streets, the forum, what happens in the forum, Roman baths, what were they used for, and for example, not just bathing. Thinking about slaves and freedmen. So it's a bit like a history exam, but a lot easier. And again, there's no big essays like you might get in a history. A lot of it is just simple 1 word or 2 word answers. The exam involves pictures and extracts from text, which you answer questions on, not it's not just writing essays at all. There's very short answers for the Roman civilization. So basically, what it's doing is the Latin is giving you a background, a brief tour of what goes on in Roman times, and gives you an idea of how, maybe a better understanding of how and why certain things are in modern day times. And you can date things back to what were happening in Roman times. Whether it's how politicians write their speeches. You can trace that back to Cicero. Why people write books the way they do, why we live our lives in society the way we do. It all dates back, and I think it's a really interesting and good fun thing to do, to find out about some of these things, because we do have fun. It's not just sitting. We watch films, extracts from films, and when we study the language and the literature. Okay. So what sort of skills are required? So obviously it'd be useful if you had an interest in languages, and I don't just mean Spanish and French, but also in English, because you'd be surprised about how many people who have studied English at university or even become English teachers have got some sort of classic background, whether it's classical civilization or Latin itself. And you can see the roots of the English language if you went on to study English language at A-level, for example. And so your ability to look at, how languages work, where are the patterns, the verb endings and things like that. Can you see similarities between English and Latin, Spanish and Latin, French, and between those? And it will help you improve your English vocabulary through the study of Latin. If you've got a interest in history or politics, want to find out a bit more about the Roman period, and as I've mentioned before, how it has influenced modern life, then that would be useful. Literature, if you enjoy English literature, hopefully you'll enjoy Latin literature, less analysis, but certainly, some fun texts with the topics this year are quite fun with the magic side of things. Okay, if you're interested in science, finding out, well, why are all those words that you use in science? Every part of the body, every planet, flower, the periodic table, everything is in Latin. So, finding out why and how these things are named, that might be useful. If you've got interest in going on to do medicine, again, is that you don't have to know Latin to do that, obviously, but it's a little bit of background which is helpful. If you are well organized, if you've got an inquiring mind, if you're enthusiastic, passion, and a sense of fun, okay, it also, we do problem solving. It involves critical thinking and some independent learning as well. So all of those would be fantastic. Because Latin is the root of so much of the vocabulary and terminology of lots of subjects, for example, such as science, it is useful preparation for further study of lots of topics. So whether it's law, where they use Latin terminology, medicine obviously does. You don't have to have Latin to do it, but it just gives you a little bit. If you just have Latin GCSE, helps you have a better understanding of some of it. Universities look very highly on students who have studied Latin, so that's another thing to think about. Previous students we've had have gone on to do all number of subjects at university or in their careers, and there are just a sum. It's not just obviously classics and ancient languages, but there's law, there's medicine, there's English language, there's all sorts of things. So basically you can study anything and Latin will be able to help you. Okay, some frequently asked questions. Can you study Latin as well as Spanish or French? Yes, you can, because Spanish and French are in a separate option on the option sheet. Latin comes in the main option block, so that is definitely a possibility. Do you have to be good at languages? That is a tricky one. And I can say yes but no but, because it is a language. Latin is a language, therefore you have to learn vocabulary, you have to learn grammar, but there is not such a wide range of vocabulary as Spanish or French GCSE, and the grammar is much more accessible and logical than Spanish or French as well, but you still have to learn the vocab, okay? Because only 50% that is language, the other half is basically Roman civilization, so I'm including literature in that Roman civilization, because you're looking at their beliefs of superstition and magic, which is part of their daily life. It's less focus on language than obviously if you're doing a modern language like Spanish or French. Can you take Latin as your language and not do Spanish or French? That has been a possibility in the past. I can't answer that definitely at this moment because it depends on how the option process continues. So that may be a question you might have to take up with Mr. Powell. But it's certainly a question we get asked a lot. And as is the next question, is it hard? As I've said before, it's a language, you have to learn vocabulary and grammar. So if you don't enjoy learning vocabulary and grammar, and you struggle with Spanish or French at the moment, maybe Latin is not for you. Although I'm loath to put people off, because obviously, I think it's a really useful and important subject to do. But 50% of it involves language, so have a think about it seriously. But don't forget that the other half is history, literature, other types of things. So how does that balance out overall? That's for you to decide. Are there any trips or enrichment activities? We look at trying to run trips, whether it's UK bound, not just down to the Roman Baths. We're very lucky we live in Bath with the Roman Baths just down the road, but somewhere slightly further afield, like around Cirencester or over to Wales, Caerleon and places like that, or even Fishbourne Palace on the south coast are possibilities. And Italy would obviously be the further afield residential trip, possibly. That could be on the cards. We've also been involved with primary liaison in the past. For several years I've worked with a couple of local primary schools who have taken up Latin, either had it on their curriculum or as an after school club. And so year 10 Latin students prepare and plan and teach two lessons, a Latin language lesson and a Roman Civ lesson to the primary school pupils who either come into school here or we've gone into them. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out with COVID restrictions and stuff. And in the past, believe it or not, we've also had Latin students performing plays at the gala. Now, some are performed in English, but there was one year when they performed it in Latin. So, that's not compulsory by any means. But, if you fancy dressing up in a toga and performing a play as part of the gala, then we can do that. So we're happy to look into what possible opportunities there are to support you. So there's my email if you want to get in touch and ask any more questions. Obviously students can ask me questions in school or later on, and also Mrs. Blythe, you can ask questions of Mrs. Blythe as well. I hope that's answered questions. I hope that's given you a bit of an insight to Latin. I think it's a fantastic subject and very useful, but it's up to you and you decide. Thank you for listening.